The exercise files for today's course are located in the video description below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Hello everyone and welcome in. My name is Joe. I'll be facilitating this class for you today. Welcome to Google Sheets Advanced course. If you're ready to take your spreadsheet skills to the next level, well, you're in the right place. In this course, we'll dive into powerful tools like named ranges for better data organization. We'll get into XLOOKUP to easily find and retrieve information, and also get into some financial functions like the PMT function that handles loan calculations. Plus, we'll get into some database functions that make data analysis a breeze. By the end of this, you'll be working smarter, not harder. So let's jump right in and have some fun in Google Sheets.
Looking to support our channel and get a great deal? Become a member today to unlock ad-free videos. That's right, your favorite courses without a single ad. Interested in a specific video? Purchase one of our ad-free courses individually. Looking for even more? Gain access to exams, certificates, and exclusive content at LearnitAnytime.com. More information can be found in the video description below.
The first thing we're going to get into is named ranges. Now, named ranges are amazing because you can reference them throughout all of your different spreadsheets. And not only that, it allows for us to not look at absolute cell reference and use Excel's language, but actually use our language that we're familiar with. So I'm going to show you an example of how we would do this without named ranges. Right now, what I want to do is I want to get all of these taxes, and I want to get them by multiplying the subtotals by this tax rate. Now we know that if we click into this and we start off with our equals, we're going to say we want to take the subtotal, multiply that using an asterisk symbol by the tax rate. And when we press enter, that works perfectly. But now if we want to use our autofill handle and click and drag down to copy the pattern of that, it's not going to really work. And the reason being is because right now it's using relative reference instead of absolute, which means that we're going to result in a ton of different errors. So if we look into these, it says, okay, we're taking I4 times J1. That worked beautifully. But this one came up with 0 because it did I5 times J2. It's relative to the cell before it, and it's following those, right? I6 times J3. So it doesn't make sense. We have to actually lock down using absolute cell reference using our anchors, our dollar symbols. And I'll showcase that. So we'll do equals the subtotal multiplied by J1. And then we can go in and add in a couple of dollar signs, a dollar sign in front of the J and a dollar sign in front of the 1. You can also, if you want to, use a keyboard shortcut for this. It's going to be the function key F4. So you'll see on top of your keyboard here, a ton of function keys from F1 to F12. We're using F4, and sometimes you do have to press the F4 with the FN key, which turns on the function key. So if you see an FN in the bottom left-hand corner of your keyboard, you can hold those two together if hitting F4 by itself doesn't work, or you can turn on the FN lock to keep it on always. So I'll just click anywhere near the J or the 1, press my F4, and it puts the dollar signs in for me. And that's a nice little trick there. So now that I've done that, it's going to work beautifully. I can click and drag down, and there it goes. And what's happening is it's using relative reference for the I4, so it'll go I4, I5, I6, I7, but it's locking, using those anchors, the J1 in place. So now it's I4 times J1, I5 times J1, I6 times J1, and so on and so forth. Now that's great, and that does work for us. So sometimes we do need to utilize that. But as I said before, we're still referencing using Excel's language, right? We're referencing the column and the row. Instead, we want to reference a name. Maybe I want to call J1 tax rate, since that's what it is. And then I can use that tax rate for anything else within this file. So the first thing to do is click on J1. We'll then go over to the name box right up here. And inside of the name box, it'll even say J1. And we're just going to type in there. Now, before you can actually type, though, it is important to note the naming convention. You can't use something like this, tax space rate. That's not allowed. So instead, you can use tax underscore rate, or you can say tax rate without a space. Those are both acceptable. Whichever way you want to do it, you can. So we'll go in, I'm going to click into J1, I'm going to do tax underscore rate, and you have to press enter to confirm it. So once you press enter, it saves that. So when I click on I1, it says I1 in the name box, or K1 says K1. But if I click into J1, it now says tax rate. So now all we have to do is just use our language. We're going to do equals the subtotal multiplied, and we can start typing out tax rate, and you'll see it even pops up, and you can press the tab key to fill in the rest, and it's the named range is J1. So it'll reference the worksheet and the cell. And now I can press tab, press enter, and look how cool that is. I don't have to use dollar signs to anchor this down. Now, as I said before, what's really great about this technique is later on I can go to any worksheet, any cell, like let's say we go over to the if functions, we'll be doing that a little later. I can go in now and I can do, I wonder what 200 times our tax rate would be. So I could say 200 times, and I can once again use tax rate no matter where I am, and it'll give me my 17.5. So that's what I love so much about named ranges is you can use them throughout your entire file whenever you need to. Take a moment, try this out on your own, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about where we can find those named ranges. Now that we know how to make a named range within Google Sheets, what we can do next is we can actually name more than just a single cell. For instance, maybe I want to see how much do I have to pay total on taxes. So I can select from J4 all the way down to J9, go to the name box, and I'm just going to call this taxes and press enter. Now I can use this anywhere I want. I can go in and say, I wonder what the sum of taxes is. And this is great because we're no longer using Google Sheets language, right? We're not referencing Google Sheets J1 or J4 through J9. Now we're saying, hey, what is the sum of taxes? And I can press enter and get that number there. And you can do this with all of them. You can name all of your ranges. For instance, maybe I also want to see how many items I sell. And I can go in, name my ranges, items, go over here and do a count. And I'm going to use a count A because when you use count, you're using the number of numeric values. Since these are strings of text, you're going to use count A, the number of values that are in the data set. And now I can say items. And I'll say there's 6 items. So this is a great way to not use Google's language, but use our own language in referencing our different functions and our data. Now, once you've named a single cell or a range of cells, we can now access those by going to either of two places. We can either go to the drop-down for the name boxes where we were naming our ranges, and you'll see here manage name ranges, or you can always go to the data menu, and this is where you can find named ranges. So either one of those ways, you can access those. I like to click the drop-down and go to manage named ranges, and you'll see all of them here, items, tax rate, and taxes. You can always add more ranges, or you can delete a range as well, just by clicking the little edit icon, and then choosing delete. You can also rename it, change the data range, and then when you're done with all of that, you can always close out the pane. So take a moment, try to name a ton of different ranges, name one range, access the name manager, and then we're going to move on to XLOOKUP. The next thing we're going to be going over is XLOOKUP. And in Google Sheets, XLOOKUP function is super powerful. It allows for you to search for a value in a range and then return a corresponding value from another range. And it's actually an improvement over VLOOKUP, which was vertical lookup, HLOOKUP, horizontal lookup, and also the index match functions. And the reason it's so great is because it can actually search both vertically and horizontally. It also supports exact and approximate matches, and it handles missing values really nicely. So we're going to go over all the fun stuff with XLOOKUP, starting with being able to look up information about this product name. Let's say that we have this product name. It's a notebook that we have in there right now, and we want to look up the price. So essentially what I want to do is I want to make this a lookup function, where somebody can type in a product, and then the price will pop up. So to use XLOOKUP, we're going to start off with equals. We're going to type in XLOOKUP and press the tab key to open up the parentheses. It's going to ask you for a search key. What are we looking for? So I'm going to go over and say, well, I'm looking for whatever's in this cell F1. I'll then put my comma. The next thing it's going to say is, where are you looking for it? What's the lookup range? Where are you looking for the word notebook? And really, we're just looking for it in column B. So I can just click on the B because I want to look through this entire list for the word notebook. After that, it's going to say, okay, what do you want the result to return, right? The result range. What are we looking for once we find the word notebook? Well, we're looking for the prices, which are in column C. So we're looking for the word notebook. Once it finds it in this list, it'll then return what's next to it in the pricing column. And that will give us our price. And when I press enter, look at that, $5. And now it's fully set up. Anything that you want to search for, let's say I want to search for how much a binder is. It will now tell me that the binder is $4. Or maybe I want to search for how much is a printer. And it'll tell me a printer is $100, and so on and so forth. So we can search for this entire list. But as I said before, there's so much more power to XLOOKUP, right? Because it can look from the top to the bottom, or it can look from the bottom to the top, we can actually have a sequential list. For instance, let's say notebook. It used to be $5. We don't want to get rid of this product because maybe people will still want this, or maybe we're not ready to get rid of the historical data yet. But we have the new notebook, which is product ID 69, and it's now $8. How do we tell the system we want to use the $8 price instead of the $5 price? Because when we look up notebook right now, it gives us $5. Well, that's going to be our search mode. So when we click into this, you'll notice that we have missing value. We'll talk about that. Match mode, we'll talk about that as well. But the last one here is search mode. And search mode just says, do we want to search from the top of the list to the bottom, or from the bottom of the list to the top? So we can switch those. So I'm just going to put a comma here. We're going to skip missing value. We're going to skip match mode just by putting your commas in. And I love how Google Sheets allows for us to see what we're looking at. And now it's search mode. Now, if you put a 1 in there and you press enter, it's still going to stay $5. 1 means top to bottom, or that's the default as well if you put nothing in there. But if you do a -1, it's now going to bring up the $8 because it's searching from the bottom of the list first and then going to the top. So whichever one it hits first, that's what it's going to showcase. So now I have, whenever I search for notebook, $8 instead of the 5. What we're going to be talking about also with XLOOKUP is the fact that if you search for something that doesn't exist in the list, you'll get an error. For instance, I want to search how much Joe cost, right? And it's going to give me nothing because, well, that doesn't exist. So instead of getting nothing, when I search for like a bed, or maybe I want to search for a TV, right? It returns nothing, and people are going to think something's wrong. But if I search for something like a stapler, it returns something because it's actually in the list. So to fix this problem, if somebody searches for something that doesn't exist, we can use this right here, missing value. And in the missing value, you just put whatever you want to replace nothing with. Instead of it just returning nothing, I want to say this instead. Something like doesn't exist or not found. And you want to be sure that you do put that in quotes. The reason being is because, of course, this is a function. Google Sheets does not understand English, so it is being put in as a string of text. And then when we put that in there, if I search for, let's say, a notebook, it returns the price. If I search for a bed, it's not found. So that's another perk, because the old way of doing this, if you had to use VLOOKUP or HLOOKUP or index and match, is you would have to nest that inside of an if-error function. Nesting functions isn't always pretty. So the fact that Google has taken time to incorporate that if not found in there is just amazing. And it's a lot easier for us to utilize. Now, as I said before, the benefits of XLOOKUP are that it can look top to bottom. It's also vertical, horizontal. it has exact matches by default. And that's important because if we're looking for something as a range of information, well, then it won't be an exact match and it won't work. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to XLOOKUP range match, and I'm going to showcase an instance where we're not going to use an exact match all the time, but sometimes we'll have to get an approximate match. But for now, try this out on your own, and then when we come back, we'll get into XLOOKUP range match. In this example, we've actually used exact match, which is the default for XLOOKUP, which means if we search for something that's not exactly matching whatever's in the list, it won't find it, right? So if we say bed, it won't find it. If I put in notebook, it will find it because it's an exact match to the word notebook. If I spell notebook wrong, right? If I do note boo or something, or I even messed up boat boo or something, it's going to say not found. And sometimes that will happen. We'll type in too fast and it won't find it. And then they'll see, oh, I forgot the K. And then you can add the K and it'll work. So that's an exact match. But what happens if we don't want an exact match? For instance, in our XLOOKUP range match, you'll see here that we have a couple of sales reps. We have their sales, and we just want to see what percentage bonus they're getting. And we do have a bonus scheme here, a structure. We have, if they made between $0 and $50, or between $0 and $49,999, they get $0. But the minute they make $50,000, they get a 5% bonus. But then it goes to the next. Between $50,000 and $54,999, they would stay at 5%. But the minute they hit $55,000, they get 10%, and so on and so forth. So this is more of an approximation, right? And if I was to just use XLOOKUP right now, without actually choosing any type of match mode, right, I would say I'm searching for sales. I'm looking for it in this list of sales, and I want to return a percentage. And when I press enter, it's going to give me an error because it's saying, well, Joe, we actually don't see 52,000 anywhere in this list. But really, this person, John Smith, should be getting 5%. To fix this, we're actually going to change it up a little bit. I'm going to say that what I'm searching for is the sales. I am searching for it in this list of sales, and I want to be sure that I absolute reference that. I then also am looking for the result to be the percentage of bonus they're getting, and I'll absolute reference that. But this time, I'm going to go through match mode, and I'm going to say I want the closest match. Now, there's three different matches. There's exact match, which is the default, or if you use a 0, it would be the default. There is what's known as the lower approximation. So if I use -1, it'll go down to rounding to the lowest value, and that would be the 5%. So in this case, that works perfectly because if they made 52,000, they get 5%. If they got up to 55, they would get 10. But if you do use the other one, right, just a 1, which means it's rounding up, well, then it would give them 10%, which is not quite correct because we want to round down. So just be sure when you're doing this, you're using the right approximation. 1 means it's going to round up. -1 means it's going to round down. And in this case, we need a -1 because, of course, they shouldn't get 10% until they reach that 55,000. So they're only getting 5%. And now that we've done this, we can just go in and autofill. We see Mark didn't quite reach the 50,000, so Mark doesn't get a bonus. Sarah did get a bonus, 62, so that's between 55 and 65, which will round down to 10%, and so on and so forth. So this is when you would use an approximate match as a little different than using that exact match that we saw before that. What we're going to be talking about next is being able to use XLOOKUP to do some data mining, because really at its core, XLOOKUP, once again, allows us to look for a value in one column and return the related information from another column. And it can look left, right, up, down. So that's why it's a great replacement for VLOOKUP, XLOOKUP, and now even index and match. So try this out on your own, and when we come back, we'll get into some fun data mining. Let's say that we have our data all over the place, which is really in most cases true, right? Our data is never just in one file. It could be in different files or different worksheets. Or it could be like this, where it's on the same page, but it's in 3 different sections. So we can use XLOOKUP whether these tables were in different worksheets, different files, or even just separated like we have in this example. But the problem I'm having is I want to create a facts table where I have the date the person sold something, who sold it, what product they sold, if they gave a discount, how many items they sold, and I want to know the price of the item in the region they're selling it. So now really what I have to do is I have to go in and say, okay, Christy sold doublers. Okay, doublers, how much are doublers? I have to go all the way to wherever the list of products are, which is in our case here, look for doublers. Oh, there's the price. And now I can enter in the price, $79.95. And I'll do that. And then I do the next one. Okay, Dan sold sunshine. Go all the way over here, look for sunshine. Sunshine found it, $23.50. And then I put in $23.50. Now, can you imagine doing that? How much time it's going to take? And we have, I'm talking tens of thousands of products that were sold. So that could take us a very long time. But instead of doing that, we can use XLOOKUP. Because if we think about it, it's using the 3 core items we need. What are we looking for? The product name. Where are we looking for it? Product. And what do we want to return? The pricing. So we could just use XLOOKUP to do some data mining. So I'll do equals XLOOKUP. The search key is the product we're looking for, doublers. Where are we searching for it? Column A, you could just click on the A. What do we want to return? B, where the prices are. And when we press enter, how nice is that? $79.95. Now you might be wondering why I select A and B as columns. This actually just saves us time, because if we want to autofill this, we would have to select A2 through A13 and then put in our dollar signs. And I don't want to have to do that. It's harder to read it as well because there's so much going on there. That's why I like to just reference the column itself. That way we don't have to reference using absolute, right? And now when I press enter, I get that. It also gives me the formatting, which is great. Then I can just double click and it fills out those thousands of rows of data within seconds. How awesome is that? So if you want to pause right here and try that out on your own, you're more than welcome to. We're going to go over the region as well, but feel free to pause and try out the region on your own. But for now, I'll showcase it. I want to now find the region. So I'm going to do equals XLOOKUP. And you're probably thinking, well, how do I know what I'm searching for? Well, my trick for everyone is this. Now do it without using XLOOKUP, and you're going to get your answers. Think about it, watch. I'm looking for the region Christy sells in. Okay, so I'm going to look up Christy's name in this list. I found it, and I want to return the region. Okay, West. See how we just did that manually? That's how we would normally do it if we didn't have XLOOKUP. So by doing that, you'll figure out all 3 things you need. What are you looking up? Christy's name. Where are you looking for it? In this list of sales reps in column D. What do you want to return? Wherever they are selling in column E, the region. So sometimes I like to do that just to figure out what are my function arguments here. So I'm going to do equals XLOOKUP. The search key is Christy Olson. The lookup is column D. And we're returning the region in column E. Press enter. We're going to do a double click on the circle for autofill. And look at that, that is awesome. And we have just data mined that information from 2 other tables. And as I said before, these 2 other tables, they don't even need to be on the same worksheet. They could be in different worksheets. They could be in different files totally, and you can still reference them. So even though our data could be all over the place, XLOOKUP can really help us to grab related data and put it into another spreadsheet. Now at this point, you're more than welcome to also add more in. Maybe you want to insert a column to the right. Maybe I want to find out how much do we sell now. I could do price with discount, for instance, right? And in this price with discount, I'll make that bigger there. I can say, okay, well, I'm going to take the price, which is in L2, and multiply that by the discount. Now, if you just do that, if you do L2 times the discount, that's only going to give you what the discount was, right? $2.40. But if I actually want to subtract it from the original price, you would just do the original price, which is an L2, minus, right, the price times the discount. And that will give us our correct answer because we're taking the original price and subtracting it from the discount. And when I press enter, we get $77.55. Double click here, and that looks amazing. And then the last thing you could do if you really wanted to was add in another column to the right, and maybe we just want to figure out the total sales we made. Total sales. And that would just be the price with the discount multiplied by how many units we sold. And then it'll suggest our autofill. I'm going to say, of course. And we get our answers. The last couple of things here, just to clean up the sheet, would be just to change, of course, the formatting. So we want to make this into dollar signs. And also, I may just want to add in those borders. So you can select everything using Control-Shift-Right arrow, Control-Shift-Down arrow, and then just add in borders. That makes it look really nice. You can always use Control-Home key to go home. The actual word home, H-O-M-E, that will always bring you to A1 cell. And the last thing I may do here is just use Control-Shift-Down arrow, and then just change it to a currency. And now our table is looking amazing. We just got all that information within the data. So that's known as metadata, and data mining that metadata can really help us to analyze the information. So try all of that out on your own. Once again, keyboard shortcuts that are really important in this one is selecting cells. You can either select cells by clicking and dragging, but we have thousands of cells. So I like to use the Control key plus the Shift key plus the down arrow, and that will select everything to the next empty cell. So if I click on N1, Control, Shift, down arrow, it'll select everything. And then if you want to select the next column to the right, you just use Control, Shift, right arrow, and it selects everything. That way you can edit things quickly. And then always remember Control Home, right? That's going to be the Control key, plus it actually has HOME. You'll find it somewhere on your laptop. Everybody's keyboard has it somewhere else. So just take a quick look and you'll find it, and then you can use it to always go back to A1 to the top of your spreadsheet. So try this all out, have a lot of fun with it, and when we come back, we're going to switch gears and get into the if function. The next function we're going to take a look at is the if function. And the if function asks a question and reveals true or false as a Boolean factor. So I can say, if John is making a certain amount of money, if that's true, then John gets a bonus. If it's not true, it's false, then John doesn't get a bonus. This allows for us to automate our spreadsheets. So our criteria for our sales here, we have the employees' names, John, Jane, Bob, Alice, Xander, and Charlie. And the sales criteria to get a bonus is you have to make $80,500 or more. So right now, we're doing this manually. We're looking at the sales price and we're writing bonus, or we're writing no bonus. So instead of doing that, I want to automate the system. I'm going to start off doing equals if and press tab to open up the parentheses. Now it's going to ask for three values here. The first one's going to be the logical expression argument, which says, what is the question you're asking? And we're just simply asking if this sales number for John, which is in C5, is greater than or equal to the sales criteria. Now, there's two ways you can do this. You can either just write in 80,500, or you can, of course, reference cell A15 and then absolute reference it, or we can use named ranges like we learned in the beginning of this video. So whichever way you want to do this, you're more than welcome to. So I'm just going to put in the actual A15. That way, if anything ever changes, it will automatically update. And then I will absolute reference that by putting in my dollar signs. And we now have our question. Is this amount, 56,285, greater than or equal to 80,500? Now, if that's true, we have to put in something if it was true or do something. What do we want to do or say? Well, I just want to say, bonus. That's it. Or if you want to get a little more complex with it, you can even take their sales number and multiply it by, let's say, a 5% bonus they'll get. So you can either write the word bonus, and I'll showcase both of these. And then when I put in another comma, now it's saying, well, what happens if it's not true? Well, then I would write no bonus. And always remember to put these in quotation marks because they are string of text. So now we're asking the question, is whatever's in C5 greater than or equal to whatever's in A15? If it's true, write bonus. If it's not true, no bonus. And then it will autofill that for us, and it looks perfect. Now to get a little more complex, instead of just writing strings of text, we can already just put in the bonus number in there, or how much is the bonus going to be. So I can just rewrite this, and instead of having bonus or no bonus, if it was true, we could take their sales amount and multiply it by 5%. That'll tell us how much bonus they're actually getting. Or if you wanted to add it to the total, you could. And then if they don't get the bonus, they just get $0. John's going to get 0, and then we will autofill that. And look at that. You can see who's getting bonus and who's not. The last thing I might do here, just to make it a little more clear, is just add in a currency. That way it looks good. And then just adjust the column. And there it is. So whoever doesn't get a bonus is 0. Whoever gets a bonus, it shows the amount now, and we can write out the check. And you can always mix up the strings if you want. Instead of it being 0, you could write the word no bonus. That way it's more readable. And then have it look like this. And I think that looks great. So totally up to you on how complex you want to get these, but this is an example of using the if function, right? Where we ask a question and it could return 2 results, something if it's true, something if it's false. But sometimes that's not enough, right? Sometimes we need more than just 2 returns. For instance, I have here their performance scores as well. And based off of their performance score, we get a certain review. So down here are the review rates. If anyone gets less than 60 as a score, they need improvement. If they get greater than 85, they're proficient, right? Or less than 85, between 60 and 85, they're proficient. But if they get greater than 85, they're exceptional. So anything greater than or equal to 85, exceptional. Anything less than 85, but greater than 60, proficient. And anything less than 60 needs improvement. Now that's 3 different outcomes. So if we wanted to, we could use the if function, but we would have to nest an if function inside of an if function, and that could be complex. What Google has done for us is made a new function known as the ifs function with an S. And that ifs function allows for us to have as many outputs as we want, up to about 127. So I'm going to do equals ifs with an S and press the tab key to open up the parentheses. You'll see here that it's asking us for a condition, very similar to if, right? And if it meets that condition, then what happens if it's true? Then it goes on to the second condition. So really with the ifs, it's a little different because there is no false. It just runs through each iteration of the review rates. So we're going to give an example of what could happen each time. So I'm going to start off with the first thing. What happens if John's score is less than 60? Right? If it's less than 60, well, then I would write needs improvement. Now you could just write it in a string of text, or you could just click needs improvement here, right? Just be sure that you do absolute reference that. Then we move on to the next one, right? The next thing is, what happens if John's score was less than 85? Well, in that case, then John would be proficient. So we can click on E16 and absolute co-reference that. So we're just running through each iteration. If John got less than 60, it would be needs improvement. If John got less than 85, it would need proficiency. And if John's score was greater than or equal to 85, well, then John would get exceptional. And once again, we'll absolute cell reference that, put our dollar signs in. That way it doesn't move when we autofill. So this looks great. Now we can close this, press enter, and it will automatically autofill this for us. And we can see who needs improvement, who's exceptional, and who's proficient. And if anything ever changes, let's say maybe Xander goes down a couple of points to, I don't know, maybe 60, or we'll say 59. It will auto update. So that's why I love using if and if functions, because if and ifs allow for us to automate the system. So we can just go in, put in the new score, and then it'll put in the outcome. So remember, if is great if you have two outcomes you need, like a bonus or no bonus. And then ifs is great if you have multiple outputs, like 3 or 4 or 5. And once again, you can have about up to 127. All right, which is more than enough. I don't think you'll ever get past that, but it's good to know. So take a moment, try out the ifs function, have some fun with this. You can mess around. You could put in different, bonus or no bonus, or you could put in the actual bonus. Or if you want to get even more fancy, you could take the original sale, right? And you can add that to, let's see if it'll let me do it here. You can do C5 plus, and then you can put that in parentheses. That way it doesn't just tell you how much they made in bonus, but it adds it to their original amount. And then we can put that through here. So this one should be about a little over 100,000 once we fill this out. And there it is. So just play around. I personally think that'll be better if we just have the actual bonus. That way we can write a bonus check to them, but whatever you want in your example. And then when we come back, what we're going to be talking about is database functions, kind of mixing aggregates with the if function or a conditional. So things like count if it meets that condition, sum if, summarize it, or average if, average it out if it meets a condition. The next couple of functions we're going to talk about are database functions. So we have here our parent company Q1 expenses, and we have each division of our company, the East division, the category, the bill we're paying, and the total expense for that bill. And we have our North, South, and West division as well. Now the problem is that I have to come up with a full count of how many bills we're paying per category. So I'll have to go in and, for instance, software, I'll have to first count it. Okay, we have 1 software bill, 2, 3, and 4. Now that's taking me a lot of time to do. Instead, what we can use is a function known as COUNTIF. And what COUNTIF is great at is counting if it meets a criteria or a condition. So I can say that if this cell right here says software, then look in this list and count how many times the word software appears, and it'll do the count for me. So to do that, we're first going to click into F8 to equals count if. Now, just like the if function we just did, it has a count if and a count ifs with an S. Ifs with an S is if you have multiple criteria. We really only have one criteria, which is the category that we're looking for. So we're going to be using count if. But if we did have another criteria, for instance, maybe I wanted to see what division it was in, then we would use count ifs and choose both of those criteria. But for now, we're just going to use a count if, press the tab key to open the parentheses. And what's so great about count if is it's pretty much the foundation for the rest of them. Sum if, average if. When you look in sum if and average if function, it'll have the same two function arguments, the range, where we're looking for it, and the criterion. What is the criteria that we're looking for? So the range is going to be whatever the criterion is going to be. So for instance, software. Where is that going to be? In this range right here. So the range is going to be from C5, I'll use Control Shift down arrow to select quickly, to C62. Now, of course, after we put this in, we're going to choose what the criteria is, which is software in F5. And all it's going to do is look for whatever word's in here in this list and count it, since it's a count if. So when I press enter, it says 4. And that makes sense because there's 4 divisions, so there's going to be 4 bills. Now, if we were to search for something else, for instance, I can search for rent, right? There's 4 bills for rent, which is perfect. Maybe I want to see how many bills we have for salaries. How many salaries bills do we have? 2. So it's going to count how many bills we have for each. And I'll just put that back to software. Now that we know how many total bills we have, the next thing we may want to do is figure out how much do those bills total up to. So as I said before, once you get COUNTIF down, it will always have the range and the criterion. SUMIF's going to be pretty simple, and so is AVERAGEIF, because they're going to use the same function argument, but they'll have just one extra one. So let's all click into F12 to equals SUMIF, press the tab key, and you'll see the first 2 options, range and criterion. Those will always be the same as what you used for COUNTIF. So we now know the range is C5 through C62. The criterion is F5. That will always stay the same. But the last part is, well, once we find the word software in this list, what do you want us to add together? You can't really add words together, right? You can't say what's software plus software. What we want to do is we want to summarize the total expense next to it. So when it asks us for the sum range, we're actually going to be choosing column D because that's where the expenses are. So once it finds the word software in the list, it'll take whatever's next to it and then add it to the next one and add it to the next one. So it'll add those 4 bills together for us. So it's going to be the same range, but in column D, D5 to D62. And when we press enter, we get our total expenses, $17,215. And we can go in now and we can start choosing what we want to look at, maybe rent. So rent is going to be $71,160. What about our telephone bill? Maybe we want telephone. Okay, that's going to be $9,780. So as we just start putting in the different categories, we start to get the total bills that we have, 4 bills, the total expenses for those bills. And the last part is actually the average, which is identical. We can actually take this function, copy it, and put it into the average, because the only difference between SUMIF and AVERAGEIF is they're going to do an average instead. So if I go in, I can do equals average if. Right, the criteria range is going to be C5 through C62. The criterion is going to be F5. And the average that we want to average here, D5 to D62. And now we have an average. To take this a step further, we can also, if we want to, create a drop-down list with data validation. And we talked about this in a previous class. It was Google Sheets Intermediate, where we can go to data, open up data validation, and create a list of information. So you're more than welcome to do that. I really like doing things like that. We can add a rule. We're going to say we want a drop-down, and we're going to use it from a range, though. Make sure you're choosing that. Otherwise, you'd have to manually enter in each category. We're going to say drop down from range, choose that range, and we're going to say C5. And you can even, if you want to, you can just click into here and select, and then choose. Now, if you do choose the whole list, you'll see here what happens. It will automatically identify the unique values. That way there's no repetition and duplicates. So I always like that. Then we can click done. So if you just want to select C5 to C62, you're more than welcome to. But now we can close that out, and watch how nice this is. Right? We can choose whatever we want, and then we can see the result. How much do we pay in maintenance? $14,000 total. How much do we pay in advertising? $144,000. So take a moment, try this out on your own. Do count if, sum if, average if, and if you want to do some data validation, you're more than welcome to. And when we get back, we're going to talk about the PMT function. The next function we're going to learn about is the PMT function. This function is a financial function in Google Sheets used to calculate the payment for a loan based on constant payments and a constant interest rate. So it's very useful for determining like monthly mortgage payments, car loans, or any type of fixed term loan. And this is a really nice function that we can even expand on to see our monthly payments, and we can get an estimate of how much we would pay depending on how many months it takes us to pay it back. Now, what's important here is you always start off with three things: your current balance, what your interest rate is that you got approved for, and then your projected pay period. So if I chose 24 months, you could choose 12 or 10 or whatever you like. Now in here, I'm going to do an original, which means I want to take the original amount of months and use the PMT to see my monthly payments. I'll then, after that, change out the months and swap them out to see how much my monthly payments would be if I paid it off sooner or if it took me a little longer to pay it off. And this will determine how much I paid totally to see, am I really overpaying in interest? Or if I pay it off quicker, you'll see you're not paying as much interest to your balance that you took out. So we're going to start off in B8. We're going to do equals PMT, press the tab key, and the first thing it'll ask us for is the interest rate. Now this is important because if you're doing an interest rate for quarterly, right, that would be 4 quarters. So you would take this interest rate and divide it by 4. If you were doing this annually, then you would do divided by 12 months, or maybe you're doing it every half a year, so you would do 6 months. So depending on what your interest rate and how you pay it and how it's distributed is what you're going to put here. I'll just do an annual, so I'll do 12. So I'm going to take the interest rate divided by 12, put my comma in. It'll ask me the number of periods for the payment. I'm going to choose 24 months. And then it's going to ask my present value of the loan, which is $6,500. Now that I have this, when I press enter, it's going to say that my monthly payments are $338. So I would take now that $338, I would say take this and multiply it by the 24 months. And I'll see here, we're not going to do autofill, that we have 8,116. So we're paying a little bit more in interest because we're taking so long to pay it off. Now I do want to push this all the way down. So what I'm going to do is the interest rate's going to stay the same. So we will absolute cell reference B4, and the current balance, which is in B3, will stay the same. So we will absolute reference B3. And when I press enter, that's perfect. But for the rest of these, I actually want to rewrite it so that it's no longer B5 it's looking at, but it's going to be B6 or B9 for the 6 months, or A9 in this case. So what I'll do is I'll take this, I'm going to drag it down. It's going to give me an error because it's saying, okay, B4 divided by 12 and B6. We're going to say we don't want B6. Our payments, right, number of periods, is now an A9, and we'll press enter. It will now autofill beautifully for us. And look at this. Now it says, okay, if you pay this off in 6 months, yeah, your monthly payment's high, but how much would we pay total in interest? So I'm going to do equals B9 times the 6 months, A9. And we would pay $6,929 off of our $6,500 original. So we're really paying a lot less in interest if we pay it off quicker, as opposed to paying it off in 24 months, which we would pay a little over 15 or 1900 there. And I'll just pull this down, and there we go. The longer we take, the more interest we pay. The less amount of payments, the less interest. And you can have some fun with this. You can even do different interest rates and then switch out the interest rates if you want to. So let's actually do that. That'll be a fun thing to look at. So I'm just going to take all of this and I'm going to make a copy. You can just hold the control key while you click and drag it over, right? And I'm just going to click and drag that right here, or you could just use Control C and then put it here as well. I'll make that a little bigger. And let's take all of this out. And now we're going to do, instead of months, we're going to do here interest rates. Let's say I get approved for a very short interest rate or small interest rate, maybe 5%. That'd be really awesome. And then maybe I'd get a 10%. And what you'll notice is I like to put in the original just so I know it's working and matching. So I'm going to do that with this as well. I will put in an original 22.3%. I'll make this 15%. This looks good as 20%. We'll do, let's say, 25.5%, and then we'll do 27.2%. So we'll put in our original again, equals PMT. The rate is the original interest rate divided by 12. The number of periods is 24. And our present value is in B3. Now for this one, I'll do another PMT. The rate's going to be this one instead, E10 divided by 12. The number of periods never changes, so I'm going to absolute reference to B5. And our present value never changes, we'll absolute reference B3. And it'll autofill beautifully for us. And now I see how much my monthly payments would be if I get a lower interest rate. Look at that, that's really nice. If I get a higher one, it's a little more. But now we can go in and we could say take this times the month. And then for these ones, we're not going to autofill because we know we'll autofill in a second. We're going to take the monthly payment and multiply it by 5%. And then you can click and drag. And you'll see how much you paid totally, right? But always remember that this is going to always be based off of not the original, right? Because that's going to be the interest rate. You actually want to base it off of the months here, and you can absolute reference that. Because we're always going to pay the same amount of months. That's not changing this time, the interest rate is. So I know it's a little different from what we did last time. And you might try to do that and you'll get that error there, or small amounts, and you're thinking, well, what happened? It's because you have to multiply it, right? The monthly payments by how many months? 24. That's going to stay constant. And as you can see, of course, if we pay in 24 months, we'll be paying a lot more if we have a higher interest rate than if we have a smaller interest rate. So take a moment, try this out. This is the interest rate. And this one, for this interest rate, you can also do a cross-functional interest rate and monthly payments. But for now, we're just doing a nice little chart here to take a look at what would happen if we had different month payments, what would happen if we had different interest rates. We can always cross-functionalize those down here and create months going across and interest rates going down. But for now, this looks good. Try this out on your own. And when we come back, we're going to talk about something known as smart chips. It's awesome. Google created them and they come in handy. So try this one out. And when we come back, we'll get towards the end. The last feature we're going to talk about in this course are smart chips. Smart chips are interactive elements in Google Sheets that provide additional context, details, and quick actions related to data entered into a cell. So they can enhance collaboration and productivity by linking data dynamically. And we have all different types of smart chips. We have people smart chips, files, We have calendar events, locations and places, financial info, and even star ratings. We're going to go through each type of smart chip, starting with the people chip. The people chip allows for us to tag a person from your Google contacts. So to do this, I'm going to click into A4 under people and go to insert. And inside of that insert menu, we'll see smart chips. Now, when you click on insert smart chips, you'll see all the different types that I just talked about: people, files, calendar events, places, finance, and ratings. We're going to choose people, and you'll see I can choose my name here. And when you enter in a name there, all you have to do is hover over it. And when you hover, you get all the information. You can send an email quickly to this person, chat with them. You can also send them a video invite or schedule a video event. So this is a great way to interact with your sheets by using smart chips. Instead of just having my name in here, I now have all the information in one cell, which makes it really amazing. Now, the next type is a file chip, and this embeds a link to your Google Drive files. So for example, I'm going to go to Insert, Smart Chips, go to File, and then I can add in any file I want, maybe like this healthy eating habits file. And what's great about this is now I can hover over it to see a preview, right? I see the preview of it. I see I'm the owner, no changes since I last viewed it. I can open the preview, copy the link to send to somebody, or I could just click into it and it will open up into Google Docs. Pretty amazing. So as you can see here, being able to link things with smart chips can be a little more helpful than just posting like a really bad looking link. You can not get all of that information by just hovering. Instead, with smart chips, we're able to just hover over the info and get options, which is great. Now, the next smart chip is going to be our calendar event chips, which links to a Google Calendar event, right? So one of yours. So you can go to Insert, Smart Chips, Calendar Event, and then you can choose an event that's part of your calendar. Now, if you don't have any events in here, I'll show no results, but let's create an event. I'm going to go over, let's do this. Let's go to our calendar. We'll create some sort of event. And we'll create an event for this date, maybe a pizza party. I don't know, I'm making it up. And we'll save that. So now we have an event in there, and we can close this out. Now I'll go in and I'll insert a smart chip. You might have to refresh here, but it's mostly dynamic in terms of syncing quickly. So you'll see here the pizza event. And same as the other two chips, if I hover over this, I get all of the information. I can attach this to a document. I can click on the pizza event and go straight to my Google Calendar. So there's a better way of doing, right? Instead of just writing, oh, we have a pizza event, there's a better way doing this with smart chips because it allows you to always hover and get that additional information. The next one is called a place chip or a location. And that allows for us to insert a location using Google Maps. So I can go to Smart Chip, Place, and you can type in what you want to choose. For instance, I could just type in New York, New York, right? And now, if I want to, I can hover over that. It'll show me New York, New York. You can even get more specific, right? You could put in an address, and then you can even get directions straight to those. So I could say view directions to Central Park. Let's try Central Park. Let's put in Central Park. That'll be fun. And there we go. Now I hover over it. I see where it's located, and I can click to view the directions. It'll pull up Google Maps and tell me where we're going. We pick a start point, and then we can get over there. So I think, once again, this dynamic, hovering, interactive, smart chips are so amazing. Last two are financial and star rating. Financial chips, display real-time stock market data. So I'm going to go over to Insert, Smart Chip, Finance, and we can type in what we want to look at. Let's look at Google. So I'm going to do @GOOGL. Let's see if we can find something for us here. Try that again there. You don't have to use the @ in this instance, but we'll do Google. And they have so many, we'll just pick whichever one. And now what you can do is, of course, hover over and see our stock prices and market details when hovering. And you can even click to view the details and go over to stock pages. The last one here is our star rating. And we can do this by going to Insert, Smart Chips once again, and under Smart Chips, click Rating. This star rating is really nice because not only is it a visual pleasing icon, but it also, when you click it, has a drop down and the value is in there. So if you wanted to do a sum of values or an average rating, let's say for instance, we have a couple of these, and I'll just pick all different types. We can now see the average. We can do equals average, and it'll be 3.5. So it's a 3.5 star rating because these are stored as actual values. But visually, they just look amazing. All right, so take a moment, try that out, and then we are going to get into our closing. All right, everyone, I want to say thank you so much for being here for this video. I hope you really got a lot of use out of this. Feel free to check out our other videos and also like and subscribe. I will see you all next time. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you so much.